After what felt like an unnecessarily slow crawl towards the starting line of the transfer window, Chelsea have finally signed a player in Marco Palestra. The right wing back is officially the first Xabi Alonso signing. He called the player himself. He said he's been keeping up with what he's been doing and he's had his eye on him for a long time. In and around the same time, we're hearing lots of news about Malo Gusto being valued by Man City and Inter Milan. Although not absolutely nailed on that he's going to leave as of yet, if Malo Gusto were to go, are we getting an upgrade in Marco Palestra? Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sync, where we are syncing up everything Chelsea FC. And today we're going to do a little comparison. I haven't done one of these in a while. I've been waiting for a player to be signed, and lo and behold, here we are. And like I said, all of the noise surrounding Malo Gusto, 45 mil plus was what I initially saw, and I thought that was reasonable. I have seen a story that says 75 million pounds. I think that's probably for Man City. I don't know, man, 75 million quid. Don't get me wrong, I'd love that. But either way, what I want to do is take a look at Malo Gusto's last season in the Premier League with us and Marco Palestra's last season at Cagliari in Serie A, and have a little look at the player that we're getting in, and if Malo Gusto were to go, is he the right guy to upgrade that position? So first things first, we'll take a little look at the basic profiles and heat maps of the players in question. So Marco Palestra on the left, Malo Gusto on the right. The age of each player: Marco Palestra is 21 years old, Malo Gusto is 23. So either way, we're looking at players that are going to be in the team for a while, so no real issues there. Positions, I had a little bit of fun with this one. So Marco Palestra last season, at least, now I haven't looked at all of the games, but these are the ones that I have seen, played right back, right wing back, left back, right mid and right wing for Cagliari. Largely he plays on the right side, and I'm not going to lie, I think I saw something today, something around 30 of the 37 appearances that he made for Cagliari were at right wing back in a back three. Malo Gusto, it's just where I really took the mick a little bit, but I'm not even joking, but really, because we actually saw him play all of these positions at some point, albeit always starting at right back. He always found himself in one of these positions under Enzo Maresca in particular. He played right back, right wing back, left back, centre defensive mid, centre attacking mid, and left wing. I'm not going to lie, also seemed to play a shadow striker kind of role once as well, but Maresca put him everywhere, which is why it makes sense, right? Obviously, a lot of the noise at the moment about Malo Gusto is potentially that he's on his way to City. No one else is probably going to use Malo Gusto like that. I mean, Liam Rosinia certainly didn't. I wouldn't have thought Xabi Alonso would. Based on what we've brought in with Marco Palestra, and we're going to get into the stats in a minute, and you can even see it already in the heat maps. You know, we want someone on that side who's going to kind of stick to that side and not float around everywhere. So which foot do they favour? Marco Palestra supposedly is actually dual-footed. Is it ambidextrous if it's for your feet? I know it's ambidextrous for your hands. I'm not sure about for your feet, but Malo Gusto is a right footer. He has played on left back, but he does favour his right foot. So the good thing with that in terms of Palestra is if we do need him to feature on the left side, which I don't think we will, we don't necessarily lose the ability to just bomb up and make a quick cross without needing to turn around or do it on what is ostensibly a weaker foot. And then we'll dive into the heat maps, and I think already, like, it's a subtle difference, really. It is a subtle difference, but you can already kind of see what we can expect from Marco Palestra compared to what we've been getting with Malo Gusto. Marco Palestra, his heat map is obviously on the left, and he is married to that right hand side. And look, you know, a couple of little red spots on the left there as well. We know he played left back and, you know, on the left side a few times, but come on, like, for the most part. And what there is also is a fairly big green gap in the middle because he was not spending much time getting into midfield at all. So obviously all of his main areas are on the right byline. He, you know, whether that's right wing, right back, right wing back, whatever it is, he's bombing up and down that byline, and he is kind of, you know, hugging it in order to facilitate, and that's just kind of his thing. We move over to Malo Gusto, and it's obviously largely focused on the right side, but the patches are a lot wider and get really deep into midfield. Outside of that, you can see that he spends a lot more time on the left in general, and also in the very centre of the park. Like I say, if you compare that to Marco Palestra's heat map, he's not spending any time in the middle of the park at all, and Malo Gusto is spending a lot of time in the middle of the park. Like I say, obviously mostly on the right side. He is a right-sided player. We weren't starting him at left back very often. We weren't starting him as a midfielder that often, or, you know, whenever he was getting into these other positions, he was doing it from a right back position and inverting and swapping and changing and trying to be unpredictable, because Maresca absolutely loved doing that with him. But with Marco Palestra, it's a lot more cut and dry. He is a right-sided player, and I think it's really interesting to see that that is what Xabi Alonso has been looking for. We know that Xabi Alonso called him. We know that Xabi Alonso obviously turned Jeremy Frimpong into an absolute beast from that right side, and maybe we're looking at our own one right now. And guys, if you've made it this far far into today's episode of the Stamford Sync, please do me the distinct honour of liking and sharing the video, subscribe to the channel, or just roast me in the comments, whatever gets you through your day. Right, so let's move on from the basic stuff, the profile stuff, and let's start getting into the stats. So Marco Palestra played 37 games in Serie A last season, and Malo Gusto played 34. Now, pretty close. But when you look at the starts, things start to get a little bit different. Marco Palestra started 34 times for Cagliari in Serie A, and Malo Gusto only started for us 26. So of those 34 appearances, 8 of them were coming on as a sub. So Marco Palestra instantly is what was a cornerstone of the team, and Malo Gusto were, you know, a lot of the time, for instance, Reece James played in midfield last season, didn't he? And that was when we would start to see a bit more of Malo Gusto. And you can tell just by the difference in minutes, Malo Gusto was not playing nearly as many full games as Marco Palestra was either, with playing about, what's that, very quick maths, 800 minutes, which is something like 7 or 8 games less worth of football, even within the starts and the games that you're getting. So Marco Palestra, cornerstone of his team. Malo Gusto has continued to be a utility player for the most part. Right, then we take a little look at the attacking stuff, and we'll start with shots excluding blocks. In Serie A last season, Marco Palestra made 20 shots, 20 attempts at goal. Love that. Brilliant. As a right wing back, he's obviously very attacking, which is obviously how Jeremy Frimpong was as well. So, you know, that's a good thing. Malo Gusto made 9 shots in total, and I feel like not every one of them, because a couple of them went in, right? But a lot of those shots just weren't very good. Like, shooting is not really his game, to be completely honest. Shot accuracy, 35% shot accuracy for Marco Palestra, which says that 1 of 3 of his shots is on target. 66.67% for Malo Gusto. So that literally is easy to figure out, isn't it? Of his 9 shots, 6 were on target, which I guess isn't bad, to be fair, at the end of the day. But he's obviously not taking many shots, so the more you shoot, the more likely you are to get your percentage down. And I would rather players were taking, you know what, like twice the shots and and not getting as many at the end of the day, because we need to create opportunities and stuff. The goals. Now, I've been quite harsh on Malo Gusto for not being, having massive output at the end of the day, but Marco Palestra only scored 1 goal in Serie A last season, so not a red flag necessarily. But with Malo Gusto scoring 2, one of my initial concerns about Malo Gusto in the Xabi Alonso system has been comparing him to the likes of Jeremy Frimpong, and to a lesser extent Alejandro Grimaldo as well. And I was like, these guys are getting 12, 14 goals a season. Do you know what I mean? And it was such a massive part of the way that Leverkusen played. And my initial thing was like, I don't necessarily think that Malo Gusto's got the attacking chops to keep that up. But looking at this, Marco Palestra, you could ask the same question. The Italian league is ostensibly an easier league. He played more minutes. He got a lot more game time and stuff as well. So, to be fair to Malo Gusto in that respect, there is nothing to say now, because, you know, I would assume that, you know, Marco Palestra, bearing in mind all the shots he makes as well, I would assume that Marco Palestra is going to be asked to try and score goals in attack, but maybe, based on that, Malo Gusto, if he sticks around, could be the same. Conversion rate sort of follows the trend, a 3.45% conversion rate, so that means that not even 4% of Marco Palestra's shots went in. Malo Gusto obviously took a lot less shots, scored double the goals, technically, for a conversion rate of 16.67. So yeah, that's an interesting one. Like, I was a bit surprised actually. Like, I knew that Palestra's creative stats were pretty good, but when it comes to shooting, I was expecting a little bit more, only because, like I say, and maybe this isn't going to be exactly how it is, but I think about Frimpong and Grimaldo, and I'm like, man, those guys were banging them in. Even last season, without Xabi Alonso there, Grimaldo scored 14 goals in the league last season. And also, if you think about it, Jeremy Frimpong has kind of struggled a little bit to adapt to the Premier League, but I guess largely that's to do with injury and not playing the same position at Liverpool that he did at Leverkusen. So the opening gambits that we're looking at so far is Marco Palestra is able to stay fit for an entire season, which is fantastic, and he is making more shots in general. He's getting into more attacking positions, but Gusto, by we're talking about 1 goal at the end of the day. Do you know what I mean? 1 goal, in a lot less minutes though, to be fair. 1 goal difference in a lot less minutes. Malo Gusto at the moment, with Premier League experience, takes the attacking stats, or the goal scoring stats so far. But the main takeaway for me from here isn't that Gusto so much of a better goal scorer than Palestra is. It's just kind of taken away my idea of, I wasn't sure if Gusto could be coached into that, because if Alonso is thinking he can coach Palestra into that, then maybe he thinks the same about Gusto. We'll have to see what happens. So next up, we're going to look at the passing stats. So Palestra still on the left, Malo Gusto on the right, of course. Passes attempted across the season, Marco Palestra 866, Malo Gusto 1,262. Now, I'm not surprised about this at all. I don't think this is necessarily a stick to beat Marco Palestra with in particular, because he was playing as a right wing back, whereas Malo Gusto was inverting into midfield all the time, and he was playing a 6, an 8, a 10, a left wing, shadow striker, whatever. Do you know what I mean? All the positions. But Maresca liked to try and work the ball through Gusto quite a lot. So obviously Malo Gusto comes out there in terms of passes attempted. Absolutely not surprised at all that he's attempting a significant chunk more. And again, the context of that to bear in mind is that in total, if you count the minutes, it's like 7-8 games less for Malo Gusto. So, you know, that's impressive that he, you know, and again, another reason why you can understand why Enzo Maresca would want him, because he was a good passer. And then we move on to the passing accuracy. 85.1% pass accuracy for Marco Palestra and 86.85 passing accuracy for Malo Gusto. So again, that makes sense in the context of the positions that they were playing. And 85% passing accuracy is great. Do you know what I mean? 90 plus is like elite. Anything above 80 generally is quite good. 85 is really good. So this isn't a bad thing for Palestra. I mean, yes, Malo Gusto's passing accuracy was better, but that was kind of more of the role because he was inverting into midfield so often. So this is more of a context thing than a better or worse, because they both played their positions really differently. Long balls, long passes attempted by Marco Palestra, 51. Again, from Malo Gusto, he takes this one, 83 attempted. So fair play to Malo Gusto, and again, makes sense because he spent a lot of time in midfield. And, you know, what Marco Palestra probably is going to be is the guy on the end of a long ball rather than the one making one at the end of the day. When you think about how kind of high and wide he was played in general, and obviously with Gusto getting into midfield more, that makes sense that he was looking for options to get the ball to attackers. Long pass accuracy, Marco Palestra takes this one, 54.9%, so just over half of his long balls were reaching their target, which is a good thing. And similar for Malo Gusto, 50.6%, so they're both pretty good in this respect. Now, other than the amounts, their success rates are quite similar, which is good because that means we're not necessarily losing anything. And like I say, I'm not surprised that Marco Palestra made less passes in that Cagliari team, mostly playing from right wing back, and I'm not surprised that Malo Gusto made a significant amount more with him getting into midfield all the time under Maresca. But like I say, the percentages is what's important there. 85% is less than Malo Gusto's for Palestra, but at the same time, really good return. Like that's a great passing percentage for almost any player, really. I think one of the highest percentages we've got in the team at the moment is actually Yoro Hato. It's like around 90%. It's crazy. So we'll move on to crosses, and this is where things get really interesting, because from the position that we're expecting, this is kind of what you want to see, isn't it? So crosses attempted from Marco Palestra, 109, which is wild, and that just shows you he was bombing down that right flank, putting crosses in a lot. I mean, what's that? That's more than 2 a game. You know, he played 37 games. That's nearly 3 a game. It's like 2.6, 2.7 average crosses attempted per game, which is good. Malo Gusto, 58. But again, I do understand that in context, it makes sense. It's not necessarily a stick to beat Malo Gusto with. It's very largely because he was playing so much in midfield. He wasn't, I mean, he did make crosses, obviously, and I remember, you know, in the grand scheme of things, that's just short of 2 a game as well. But it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Like I say. But ultimately, we move on to the accuracy, and this is where things change a little bit. Crossing accuracy for Marco Palestra is 24.77, and that's because they're almost nice round numbers, that's easy to kind of start to surmise that 1 in 4 crosses from Marco Palestra is meeting its target, which is about 25 of the crosses. So 25 crosses meeting their target. That's potentially 25 opportunities for goal, which is awesome. Malo Gusto, 20.69% crossing accuracy, which is 1 in 5. So that means 10 of his crosses. So that's the thing, you know, it's one of those, isn't it? Like I say, really, this isn't so much of a stick to beat either of them with. It genuinely just kind of shows you how differently their positions were kind of handled last season. Obviously, the opening half of the season with Enzo Maresca, Malo Gusto playing in every position available, and Marco Palestra is just generally playing as a right wing back or a right-sided player in general. But ultimately, his crossing is good. Both of their passing is good at the end of the day. No one loses here, I don't think, to be honest. I think that if we were to keep both of them, they've both got good passing accuracy. They've both got good long ball accuracy. Palestra definitely a better crosser, and the fact that he attempts so many more, you know, that normally drives the number down as well. So I would, out of this, the only win really is that Palestra's crossing, I would argue, is probably far in front of Malo Gusto's. Right, how well do they defend? Let's have a little look. So in 37 games, Marco Palestra made 55 tackles. So it's quite impressive on Gusto's side when you think about it, because he made 53, which is only 2 less in what was ostensibly 3 less games, but about 6 or 7 games worth of time less. So actually, that's not really a win for Palestra. That's kind of more defensively, that's more of a win for Gusto because he did a lot more in a lot less time. Take-ons completed, here we go. This is the difference now. 70 take-ons completed for Marco Palestra tells you the kind of player that he is and the kind of player that Xabi Alonso wants. He wants someone who's going to beat his man. It has been so frustrating watching our wingers not being able to beat their man. And that's the thing, like I say, Gusto's not really been playing that kind of position. And we'll get onto his stats in a minute. But when you think about the likes of Alejandro Garnacho and Jamie Gittins, you know, Pedro Neto a lot of the time as well is like running down that byline and then turning around and passing the ball back. Like Marco Palestra is there to beat his man, and he does it 50% of the time, 51.85% of the time. So that's really good. So 35, nearly 36 of his take-ons were completed, which puts him into 36 attacking positions. That's really good. Now, again, this is totally different when we see with Gusto, take-ons completed 12. So he only managed to take on his player 12 times throughout the entire season with a 50% success rate, which is quite impressive. You know, the percentage is close to Marco Palestra's there, but a lot less, just a lot less. And that, again, it shows you the difference in the kind of players and what Xabi Alonso is looking for. Fouls one, this is wild. And it makes sense when you look at the take-ons as well. Marco Palestra was the most fouled player in all of Serie A last season. He was fouled 108 times. 108 times. That is, again, 2 point something per game. Do you know what I mean? Nearly 3 times a game. He was nearly fouled 3 times a game. Malo Gusto was only fouled 20 times. So players weren't looking at Malo Gusto at Chelsea and being like, we have to get the ball off of this guy. They weren't worried about it, and that tells you that it was pedestrian passing, recycling stuff around. You know, there's a little bit of nuance that you can kind of delineate from that. But Marco Palestra being fouled 108 times says that when he's on the ball, the opposition will look at him and being like, we need to get the ball off this kid because otherwise things might happen. And then that takes us to fouls committed. 41 fouls committed by Marco Palestra in 37 Serie A games, so that's more than one a game. Gusto, 20. So impressive for Gusto there. I think, was he one of the players that got sent off? I can't even remember anymore because we had so many players sent off, but he didn't even commit that many fouls. So Gusto's a tidy player in that respect, kind of happy to go about playing his game. We do know that he's good at a slide tackle, for instance. Do you know what I mean? His defensive work is actually pretty good, honestly. With Gusto, it's just what you kind of don't get from him further up the field that is the main problem, really. And in the formations we've been using for the last couple of years, the fullbacks have been really important to that. So that's kind of been a little bit stressful. But ultimately, 41 fouls for Marco Palestra shows that he's got a little bit of work to do in his tackling, and 20 by Gusto is kind of a plus for him there. Aerial duels contested. So 35 for Marco Palestra and 33 for Malo Gusto. Again, impressive that Gusto made that many in such less amount of games. And also, you would kind of expect Marco Palestra to make more, or to contest more aerial duels because he's 6'1", so he's a lot taller than Gusto. Aerial duel success, 37.14 for Marco Palestra and 45.45 for Malo Gusto. So honestly, even though Malo Gusto's in the red for the actual contested number here, he kind of clears this one, to be completely honest, and that's really impressive because he's shorter as well. So that's something that Marco Palestra will have to work on. Bit different when we get to ground duels, though. This one's a little bit wild as well. This has probably got something to do with why Palestra won Serie A's Defender of the Season last season. At 21 years old and loan at Cagliari. Crazy. Ground duels contested, 379. Oof, that is 10 per game. Just over. Very, very, very slightly just over 10 ground duels per game. Palestra is getting involved in those ground duels, man. Absolutely love to see it. And then we move over to Malo Gusto, 153, which is 3 or 4 per game. So Palestra is not only an attacking threat, but man likes to get involved in the defensive work as well, which is great. We absolutely love that. So that's amazing. And then the ground duel success, 61.48 for Marco Palestra, which is absolutely phenomenal, and 55.56 for Malo Gusto, which isn't absolutely terrible, but it's not amazing either. Either way, that's phenomenal, man. So really interesting split here again, and it's kind of inarguable that for the most part Palestra takes the overall defensive thing, right? Malo Gusto, the aerial duels, that's actually really impressive when you consider he's a bit of a shorter player, but tackles, take-on success, fouls won, and the ground duel success and the ground duels contested, like wild stats from Marco Palestra there. So really, really, really impressive. Really, really good work from Marco Palestra. And then we've just got some other stats to clear up with. So clearances, bit of another defensive one. 42 clearances from Marco Palestra, 39 from Malo Gusto. Again, a bit of a revolving theme here. Malo Gusto, actually, if I was looking at per 90, for instance, which I'm not, I'm looking at totals, per 90, Malo Gusto would take that. But in terms of how many were made, Marco Palestra comes out on top on that one. Interceptions, only 20 interceptions from Marco Palestra for the entire season, and 31 for Malo Gusto. So another point to Gusto there. Cards, total cards, 3 for Palestra, 4 for Malagusto. This is now the reverse of that, where Palestra played a lot more games and had more opportunities to get cards, but wasn't doing it, and Malagusto was obviously getting more cards in less time. So that's a win for Palestra there. And then the last few stats are all Malagusto. Ball recoveries, 116 for Palestra, 122 for Malagusto. Possession lost, Palestra lost possession 401 times, and Malagusto lost possession 316. But when you think about how often Marco Palestra is being fouled, he is being attacked a lot more at the end of the day in terms of like trying to get the ball off of him. So that one does kind of stand up there, and it makes sense. Offsides, Palestra was offside 8 times and Malagusto only once, but again, that makes sense when you think about the positions that they are, right? Because obviously Malagusto was not hugging the byline and not bombing forward in that same sort of way, but Marco Palestra is going to be getting into high attacking positions a lot more often, and like I said earlier, being on the end of long balls and stuff, right? So it makes sense that he's offside a little bit more, but still, only being offside once for Malagusto, I guess, is quite impressive in itself. So guys, that's kind of it. Palestra and Gusto. What we're looking at again is 2 different style players at the end of the day. And honestly, I think that if Xabi Alonso looked into Gusto and saw what he wanted, he probably wouldn't have gone in for Palestra, because we've spent a lot of money on this kid, man. We've spent a lot of money on this kid, and he called him up himself. I would not be surprised to see Palestra become our first team choice for the right wing back, even if Gusto stays, based on the profile of the player. Xabi Alonso loves wide players, right? And Gusto, it's not his fault, but he's not even really that anymore. And it's such a shame, really, because you think about Malagusto's first season with Pochettino, 8 assists, phenomenal job deputising for Reece James while Reece James was going through the worst of his injury kind of issues. So Malagusto was a great right back, 100%. He was a great right back, and if he'd have stayed on that path and spent a few more years developing into a wider player, then maybe he'd kind of be ready for that sort of shot now. Maybe we wouldn't have gone in for Palestra. But what has happened is Maresca came in and said to Gusto, you're starting at right back, but you're not a right back and you're not a right wing back. You're going to be playing in midfield. You're going to be getting into these crazy attacking positions. You're going to play as the number 10. So, and that's got to be really difficult for a player, isn't it? Because from Malagusto's perspective, he spent 18 months under Enzo Maresca playing everywhere, essentially apart from right back. So, you know, he's developed and evolved as a player now, and that will be one of the reasons why Enzo Maresca is really keen to bring him on. Xabi Alonso would have to retrain Malagusto to be a wide player, whereas you bring the likes of Palestra in, and he's ready, he's set, he's been playing that position. So it's, you know, there's all of the other stuff. There's like, he's a young player moving to a new country, it's a new league, it's more physical. You know, there's obviously going to be a whole load of stuff for Palestra to kind of prepare for and get used to, but at the same time, positionally, Xabi Alonso is probably looking at Palestra being like, this kid already kind of knows how to do what I want him to do, and I've got to refine certain elements of his game, rather than Malagusto, where it's like, I know you've been playing in midfield for 18 months, essentially starting from right back, but I really need you to stay wide now. And like I say, with Malagusto, it was there because he was a great right back under Pochettino. But if Man City come in with a whopping knockoff bid, £75 million, mate, that's just wild, isn't it? At that point, it's like, yeah, if we can get 75 million for Malagusto, that covers Palestra and allows us to go and buy like an experienced backup or a young backup or something. So we could literally replace, if we sell Malagusto for £75 million, we could replace him with 2 players. So I just think that's absolutely wild. I think the big takeaway from all of these stats, though, in this whole thing, is that Malagusto, through the stats, hasn't been terrible for us at all. There's nuance, isn't there? Because, you know, stats don't tell the whole story. They're the outline of the picture, right? My memories of Malagusto is watching him get the ball into an attacking position and make a bad decision. Do you know what I mean? Like, or passing it back, or putting in a bad cross, or not passing it to the right guy, or not really being aware of who's around him. So that's really frustrating. But the stats say that the job he was being asked to do by Enzo Maresca, he was good at, because his passing stats were really, really good. He was a tidy footballer. He wasn't giving away loads of fouls. He wasn't getting the ball taken off of him very much. If anything, Malagusto probably needs to transition into a midfielder, because it's starting to look like he's actually got those attributes to be a solid midfielder, like an athletic workhorse with good passing range, that you don't put too much emphasis on attacking, actions and relying on him like that. But that's probably not what we need in the team at the moment. So, guys, I'm going to start wrapping the video up there. I want to know what you think about Palestra versus Malagusto. it's starting to feel like the Gusto thing, because it's not even just Man City, is it? It's, you know, Juventus have been linked with him and Inter Milan have been linked with him. You know, there's a couple of clubs that have been linked with Malo Gusto now. So it's not even just a City angle. I don't think we charge anyone else 75 mil. Like, no one, like Inter Milan are not buying Malo Gusto for 75 mil. We'll only sell Malo Gusto for 75 mil to City. Maybe if they are absolutely desperate for him. And that might be another way of us getting one over on them for the whole Maresca thing, right? Because obviously the Maresca thing has settled at £17 million, 20 million euros. But at the same time, it's like it cost us a lot more than that at the end of the day, because we didn't get into the Champions League. Our season absolutely curtailed halfway through. Liam Rosenior put us in the mud, unfortunately, and just really couldn't pick up where Maresca left off at all. So if you think about the actual money, and also it unsettled people like Marco Correa and Enzo Fernandez and stuff as well. So in the grand scheme of things, like Maresca's paddy in the middle of the season and Maresca kind of snaking us for Man City, which is what happened, because we've literally won a court case about it. Not only derailed our season, but cost us lots of money. So maybe selling Gusto to Man City for 75 mil is we can put it to bed. Everyone can just be friends again. But guys, ultimately, like I say, like Palestra, look, I know a lot of us, you know, I've had some guys in the comments before and say, oh, I didn't really, you know, I don't watch a lot of Serie A. And it's like, mate, unless you're a Serie A fan, or much more than your average football fan, not many people do. At the end of the day, I don't know anyone in the circles, the football circles that I'm in, that watched Cagliari games last season. I just don't. Do they exist? Absolutely, of course they do. But we can only see what we can see, right? We can watch highlight reels, we can look at stats, and we can kind of figure out whether he thinks it's going to fit the team. I think that it's very, you know, indicative of it being a Xabi Alonso signing when you look at the kind of position. His heat map's really important. The defensive work is absolutely amazing. Which is interesting as well, because that shows you that he'd play well as a right back, even if we don't do the three at the back all of the time. If we need just a right back and we're not asking Palestra to get up, you know, bomb up and attack as much, then we know that he can do a really good job defensively and draw lots of fouls as well. Wicked, love that. Let's get some cards for other people for a change. So yes, guys, that is it. I'm putting out another late one tonight. Oh man, it's so hot in my office at the moment. It's the only time I can record. It's literally the only time I can record at the moment. I tried recording this video earlier in the day today and I was sweating buckets. My office is a loft conversion, so it's just it's so hot. It's just ridiculously hot in here. But anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap the video up there. Thanks very much for sticking around until the end if you did, and I'll catch up with you all very soon. Take it easy. Peace.